At Third Space Charity, we support a mentally resilient community by offering accessible counseling care to young adults between the ages of 18 and 29. This is Mental Health Matters, where we discuss topics and services related to mental health and wellness in our community.
Welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Megan Woodruff, and it's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And in honor of that, we have a lovely guest today. His name is Ed Weiss. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Megan. This is a delight to be here.
Always so good, and thank you for giving us some time today. It's always wonderful when we get to hang out.
Yeah, you and I we can eat up time pretty quickly.
We can.
Both chatty Cathys.
I think so. We'll try to keep this one on time today.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about you, Ed.
I am a counselor here in Kelowna. Half of my week is spent counseling. The other half is spent working with Megan at Third Space Charity, where I am a supervisor and providing supervision, clinical supervision for practicum placement students. So these are students who are graduate students. This is their last step before they become registered clinical counselors. And so get to hang out with university students, and I love that.
And you have been doing that for quite a while.
I've been doing that for quite a while. I've been working with young people until my entire adult life. Mm-hmm. So from the time I was in my early 20s, it was with high school students. And then when I was 47 years old, I really just was very intentional about shifting my focus to work with university students. And so since then, in 2007, I made the shift to university students, and that's pretty much what I focus on.
How did you end up in the mental health field?
That's a good question. My son was going through a really difficult time. He had developed, and he was 14 years old, an eating disorder. And we had taken him to specialists. We had taken him to counselors. We had taken him to just about everybody we could think of, and nobody could touch him. Nobody could help him. And there were some other things going on in my life, and I thought, you know what? By the time I finish paying all these people to help me with my family, I'm going to be broke. And so I was taking a 2-year sabbatical from what I had been doing, which was being I traveled as a motivational speaker for about 17 years before that. And I knew it was time for a change. And so I went back to university and decided to become the counselor that was going to help my kids. Mm-hmm. And I was going to figure out how to straighten things out with my family and in my own life. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of, it was almost like, might as well spend the $25,000 on me early, because I'm going to be giving it to professionals anyway if I don't take care of some things.
Right. Yeah, we all, those of us in helping professions, we all have a deep reason why we do this work.
Right. It's true. It's interesting to me how even the students, when we ask them, and why counseling and why now, mm-hmm. either their lives were really transformed by a therapist in their lives, or they just became so aware of their own mental dis-ease or unhealth or lack of mental health, that they started to focus on it and found it fascinating and realized that they'd love to help others. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So many students, you've had so many interns, mm-hmm. and I love asking them that question too in the interview process, why counseling, why now? And we hear that from a lot of clients too, and we do feedback surveys with them, and they become inspired to support in some way in the community in terms of giving back to mental health. And so the charity has had a really great reach that way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The charity's been it's been this quiet, unsung, uncelebrated hero, in my opinion, for a long time in the community. Now it's starting to get a little more press, largely because you're our executive director.
Oh.
And so I'm just thrilled that we had a chance to be a part of it. I love that.
Yeah, you were one of the founders from the very beginning.
Yeah, it was Ken Stober's idea to create a watering hole, which was Third Space Coffee, and then a place where you can have authentic conversations and just work through your stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting to me how people think that counseling and mental health is so complicated. But if you were to ask, and we do ask so many of the people that are interns help, and you ask them, what did you get? What was your takeaway? What was helpful for you? And you'll hear this answer so many times, man. It just was fantastic to have someone that I could talk to. And it's almost like our souls need to be ventilated. We have to find a way to process what's going on when we don't even understand what's going on inside of us. But to have another human being that you can begin to at least talk to, then so often you sort it out yourself. But the other person in the room is fully there, attentive, supportive, holding space for you, which is a real honor, right? And the thing that makes counselors different than most people is that we counselors really want to hear your story.
We're so interested.
Yeah, and not everybody wants to hear my story, That's why we tend to walk around lonely most of the time. But you go to therapy and that person is sitting there going, tell me more. And then what happened?
Beautiful thing. So let's talk about men. So Men's Mental Health Awareness Month is such an important time. And to any of the men watching or who will watch, what do you think we should be talking about this month?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. Okay.
I think that, we're called human beings, but most of us are human doings. We are so busy doing that we're completely unaware of who we are. When you think about it, you are who you are from the inside out, and most of us forget that on a regular basis. We work so hard to present ourselves to the world in a way that we want the world to perceive us. But fundamentally, we are exactly who we are, and we are that from the inside out, which means that the problem with being a human is that we leak from the inside out. So whatever's going on the inside, mentally and emotionally, will find its way to the surface. It'll show up in your world. It will show up in your workplace. It'll show up in your relationships. And men are how can I put it? I don't want to put a type or a box around.
I know it's
men.
hard. It's hard.
But if I could encourage men, it's just to start to be self-aware so that you know who you are on the inside. When the work's all done and the bills are all paid, and the problem is that almost never happens.
Yeah.
Then you're left with yourself and who are you? Can you identify that?
Right. And these open type conversations, I find, it can be more difficult for men than women.
I think so. I think women can be emotionally a lot more aware, and I think in our culture, that's not encouraged. Certainly in most workplaces for men to be emotionally sensitive and emotionally, attuned to
Right.
people that you work with. It's just, it's get her done, son. That's kind of more what we respond to, right?
I was at a barbecue and I heard one man go up to another man. One man was on the grill and the other man went up to him. And I kind of just overheard them talking, and the one guy said to the other guy, like, so how's your week, man? How's it going? And the other guy said, oh, like I'm, to be honest, like just struggling a little bit, like just, my back is hurting. I'm just kind of like, it's been like a bit of a rough week. And the other guy says, well, thank goodness it's the weekend then, hey?
It's like, so helpful.
You had a friend literally just tell you that they're struggling, and that person, you could tell they wanted to say something. And the other man was just like completely brushed it off,
Sure.
right? And that's just maybe that's just what a lot of people do because it's uncomfortable, right?
Oh yeah, it's terrifying. Because what happens if this person begins to unpack a problem that I have no clue
Right.
of how to help them.
Right.
And so we'll just avoid this conversation altogether. It's why we begin most conversations with, what do you do? It's not how are you, or, it's what do you do? What do you do for a living? Like, so we can put a box around you and go, oh, that's what you do, This is what I do. Right. And now we've completely avoided anything remotely resembling an emotion or a feeling, right?
Right.
One of the ways to actually even become aware of, if what I said at the beginning is true, that who we are on the inside leaks to the outside. One of the ways that you can actually identify how you're doing on the inside is by listening to your own words. Just pay attention to, is your conversation negative? Is it critical?
On the outside,
On
or
the
what
outside,
is going
no.
on in your head?
Just over the course of the days in any given week.
Oh, what kinds of things are you talking
yeah,
about?
like what is your tone? Is it critical? Is it negative?
Right.
Is it angry?
Right.
Is everybody an idiot?
Yeah.
And because if that's what's going on, then that's actually indicative of the fact that you're sour on the inside.
Oh.
You're angry on the inside.
Right.
If there's chaos on the inside, I promise you it will leak into your world. And there will be chaos in your relationships, there'll be chaos in your workplace, because we bring it. We can't tuck it in for an extended period of time. It will find its way out.
Right.
And so that's why sour people act sour. And they don't even know, and it's funny, like, and a bad attitude is kind of like bad breath, in that when you have it, you're the only person that doesn't think you have it.
Oh.
Everybody around you knows, oh, stay away from him, stay away from her, because
Right.
they're toxic.
Oh.
You're walking around thinking everybody loves you,
Yeah, so I find that safe spaces and safe people are really a game changer for people's mental health. Lately, we've been talking about this gap between actually needing therapy, needing clinical therapy, and just actually needing a person to sit beside. And I think it's interesting what you touched on how maybe people are ignoring when other people are giving signals about not being okay because they think they have to solve it. And a real light bulb and a good thing for people to be aware of is you don't.
Right.
You probably can't have that other person's answers, but just instead of saying, oh, well, good thing it's the weekend then, say, oh, that's unfortunate, tell me more.
Right. Yeah, that's hard to find because we're living life at such a pace. Who's got time for that
to
conversation?
Stop. Yes.
You know what?
Yes.
And so that's why that conversation. You're right, but you're absolutely right. I'm convinced that people who have a safe person or a couple safe people, and you have to be real careful who you choose to be your safe person.
Yeah.
But people that will have a safe human being in their life that they can go to regularly. I think that they have a much better chance of being mentally and emotionally healthy. I had a professor say this one time. He said, if we don't take regular times of asylum, our bodies and our minds will demand extended times of asylum. And you can define asylum as a place of rest or a place of refreshing or nurturing. And so if you have a relationship in your life that is safe and nurturing, and you can find reprieve, you can find understanding, you find somebody who actually cares. And if you can find that person and be in relationship with them on a regular basis, then there's a better chance, I think, that you'll be able to handle the stuff that life throws at you.
And that person can be a counselor, but that person also doesn't have to have any knowledge of mental health whatsoever.
I agree.
Yeah.
They just have to be a human being with a heartbeat that actually cares.
Right.
You know?
Right. So what would you do if you feel like you don't have anybody in your life who is like that?
That's a hard question because we don't realize what a gift they are when they are in our lives. I suppose I once heard somebody say, if you want to have friends, be friendly. And maybe if you need a safe place for someone, maybe you become a safe place for someone else who needs it. And in turn, you might find your own safe place, you know.
I like that. That's good.
It's funny because you asked me at the beginning why did I go into counseling. I know a little bit experientially about mental illness because in my 30s, I was young. I was 32. We had a young family. We have 2 boys, and I wasn't making much money. And you hustle, and so you hustle, and you hustle, and you hustle, and somehow, you know what, life just keeps demanding more of you. So you give it, and you give it, and you give it. And I never complained. I just knew that this was my responsibility, my role. My wife was working, I was working, and those of us who are people pleasers, that is so self-sabotaging. Like we create so much of our own stress, you know, because for one...
It's hard for a people pleaser.
I know, for one tiny dopamine hit, when you say yes to somebody, it costs you, you know, hours and hours of your own time. And so I had pushed myself for several years to the point where it was really unhealthy, but I didn't know it was unhealthy. And at some point in time, in fact, I remember the day when it felt like my soul evaporated. It's like I became this empty chasm, this shell. And I knew that day, I remembered what just happened. And we had just moved into a house, and that was a really stressful situation. And I remember we were playing soccer with the boys in the field behind our house. One of my favorite things to do was to play soccer with the boys. And while my body's running around playing soccer, I'm soulless. I'm completely a shell. It was a beautiful day out. I didn't feel it. I didn't have fun. I didn't have joy. I didn't have anything. And that was the beginning of my journey through clinical depression. And so for about 6 years, it got worse and it got worse. See, there's an interesting thing about humans is that whatever has the power to hold your focus has the power to dominate you, everything in your life. And so when you feel like crap, you start focusing on that. And I start to focus on the fact that I was feeling anxious. And I'm just going, I never feel anxious. Why am I feeling anxious? This is a new feeling. It's terrifying me. And now I'm absolutely fixated on my sadness, my emptiness, my anxiety, and my sleeplessness. That's all I can think about. And what does that do? It becomes like a magnifying glass. And all of a sudden, all of those things are bigger than life, sucking the life out of my emotional tank, sucking the life out of me on every level. And when you don't know that that's what you're doing, nobody helps you figure out how to actually shift your focus. Again, I spiraled so bad. It almost cost me my marriage. It just about cost me my job. It just about cost me everything. I was that flat. And I was so desperate to get some help, I went to my doctor. And there's another reason why men struggle, because we are stubborn.
You don't want to go to the doctor.
And I didn't want anybody telling me I'm crazy, because I felt crazy.
Oh.
I really didn't want anybody telling me that's what was the problem here. I'm mentally unstable, because that's what I felt.
Right.
And so, but I finally went to the doctor. And in a very short period of time, he said, you have all the classic symptoms of clinical depression. And you would think that would be a bad thing. I was so happy to hear that word. I'm going,
You're like,
really?
It has a name?
It has a name. And if it has a name, then somebody else has had this, which means that they might even have something to fix this.
Right.
And
right.
And so I had hope. Okay, now 1 ounce of hope.
Yes.
Will get you through the day and maybe through the week, but I had hope. My doctor said that we've got medication that will help. Now, let me just be clear, that was a long journey in and of itself, finding the right antidepressant. But in the meantime, I realized I have power to I need to do something about not letting this take over my life. And so I decided to get healthy. I had lost a lot of weight in the 6 years. I had dropped like 30 some pounds, but I wasn't healthy. And so I started to run. And I would run for an hour. That was didn't even know how far I was running, just run for an hour. And for 1 hour, all of my focus was on my breathing, because I'm not a very good runner. And so I would focus on my breath, focus on breathing, focus on breathing, focus. And for 1 hour, I never thought once about, am I going to sleep tonight? Never thought once about, am I going to live like this for the rest of my life? Am I going to be anxious? For 1 hour. And I realized that if you can shift your focus to something that's life-giving, something that's positive, it'll make all the difference in the world. Like, it will start to help you. And it's like you feed your own soul, something that's life-giving. And then I started to be intentional about my friends. Because some of my friends, if I was depressed, they made me more depressed. And so I started hanging around people that were really just a lot more positive in life. And that was just so amazing. And then at the same time, I found, I have a friend we've been friends for over 30 years. And I just was intentional about connecting with him every couple weeks for lunch or for a coffee. We didn't talk about deep, profound things. It's just nice to know there's a safe person.
That's the gap. One thing that they said that people really struggled with, especially senior citizens in COVID, was those interactions, the interactions at the grocery store with the teller, or the mailman, or the grabbing the coffee, or those casual, just open conversations. And so it's interesting that you say, like, you found people. You intentionally went out and found people. And I've heard a lot of good things in here, so I want to reiterate back a couple of them that I'm hearing from you. We've heard, pay attention to what you're saying on the outside, because that will be an indicator of how you're feeling on the inside, and that will equate to being more self-aware. I've also heard you went to your doctor, so your doctor's always a resource for you. I've heard there was a journey with medication, and that can be encouraged and helpful if that's a path that people so choose. I've heard...
And when I was 33, that was not something that people talked about. No one talked about antidepressants.
Yes. Now I see memes on my Instagram feed that are like, remember to take your meds today. It's just a normal, people just talk about it. So back then there was more stigma.
Oh, lots of stigma around it, yeah.
Right, right. And how did you handle that?
I didn't care because I started to feel normal.
Okay.
And in the way that when I think about the antidepressants, like somebody said, how can I jump when I have no place to stand? And the antidepressants helped to the point where I felt like I had some stability or a place where emotionally and mentally I felt a little more solid, but I still had to do the work. I still had to get healthy physically. I still had to decide, how am I going to feed my own emotional being? How am I going to do that? Being very intentional about what to feed on, what not to feed on. So
shifting focus.
Shifting focus. Focus is everything, in my opinion.
Even if it's for such a short period of time, if you can just pull your focus to one other thing, it'll give you a bit of reprieve.
So every day I would run. But one day I stumbled upon something else. It just was so delightful that it became a bit of an obsession. I discovered that Tim Hortons has this sour cream glazed donut that is to die for. And I never had one before. And it was so good that I would reward myself once a day. Every day I would have a sour cream glazed donut.
Yes.
And again, I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I was going, what am I looking forward to next?
Right.
See, so here we have it again. It's what are you thinking about? What are you focused on? Is it, does it give you joy? Is it life-giving? And so it was quite, and it's still, and so today, I am so intentional about all of these things because I still have crappy days just like everybody else, right? And when things aren't going great and you feel like the world's against you, even more important. I'll tell you another thing, laughter. For your mental health, you know what? Go and find some comedy and watch some comedy. I love dry bar comedy personally. I will sit there and intentionally go to watch stand-up comedy and intentionally about laughing. And laughing releases so much internal stress, that it is just one of the best kind of reset buttons. If you can have a really great laugh, it'll boost your energy. It'll release all kinds of stress from your body.
Because don't they say the vibration of like shaking your nervous system when you're laughing? Yeah.
And especially when you can see, and it's a belly laugh, so is a really good laugh.
Yeah, yeah. Those ones where you just have to catch your breath after.
Right.
You're just like, whoo.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I actually do that. I'm probably 4 times a week, maybe more. I'll just take and I'll go watch a little snippet and go, okay, that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Or that was amazing. And then I send it to all my friends. You got to watch this thing.
We've had some hilarious conversations in the office.
We sure have.
Oh, so good. So
What,
good.
what I think makes it fun, in our office anyway, is there's lots of diversity.
Yeah.
Like we're quite different.
We're a strange bunch.
And we really enjoy each other's company, and but we get to laugh at even our diversity. And I
Yeah.
think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. One of my favorite life stories that you've told is when you discovered the flower. Do you remember that
Oh
one?
yes, I do.
Can you tell the viewers that?
Sure. So when you start taking an antidepressant, it doesn't fix you right away.
No.
I was, and because I had to taper off, taper on, find one that didn't grow hair on the palms of my hands, and the side effects were often more uncomfortable than the actual symptoms of clinical depression. So it was a journey, but I was committed to doing my part in it, and I knew that the day, because of this day, I knew I was getting better. I'm doing the same run that I would do every day. And I'm in the forest. We lived in Calgary, right on the river. And so I'm coming around through this forest, and I'm just running on a path. And I go past this tree, and somehow out of the corner of my eye, I see, and this is March in Calgary. It can snow in Calgary in June, okay? Spring doesn't happen like it does here in the Okanagan. And yet there it was in the month of March, there was this little flower growing up right by this tree. And I took one or two steps, and then I turned around and I realized something. I felt pleasure. See, when you're clinically depressed, you don't feel anything. That's the problem. And I got right down on my knees to look at this flower, and I almost wanted to weep because this flower gave me pleasure, gave me joy. And before I stood up, I thanked the flower for the joy that it had given me.
Yeah.
And I ran home, and I'm not that guy. So this was a brand new thing, but I realized I was evolving as a human being.
It was almost like the first sign.
It was the first sign that I'm getting better. And I will tell you, once I got back to what I consider to be, 8 or 9 out of 10 every day, I always remember that day because it gave me hope. See, if you can focus on hope,
Yes.
there it is again.
I've heard that when hope goes away, that's when things like burnout happen, right? Like that's when more serious.
Yeah. In fact, there's an ancient proverb that says that hope deferred makes the heart sick.
Oh.
And it's true. You take somebody and steal their hope, you're going to find that that's somebody that's going to wrestle to get out of bed in the morning.
Right. Is there anything else that you want the viewers to know, or any just around trying to be well, trying to navigate, being a masculine person, a masculine being? You've given us amazing tidbits today. So,
I think probably the other thing that I would say is that every one of us has an internal narrative. It's the story we tell ourselves of who we are. Okay. Human beings have the ability to have more than one voice in their head. The term is polyphonic. We have our voices from the past. We have voices from our parents. We have voices from people who were critical of us. We have voices of people who like us and people who don't like us. And so somehow you have to manage all those voices, but all those voices converge on and form a narrative, a story we tell ourselves of who we are. When I talked about being self-aware, can you identify the story that you tell yourself of who you are? And it's almost always a story of not enoughness. Do we ever feel good looking enough? Do we ever feel smart enough? Do we ever feel like we're accomplished enough? Most of us never know. We wrestle to ever find those moments. And yet, if you were to ask the people in your world, they would tell you that you are more than enough, that you're extraordinary, and that you're magnificent, and that thank you for being a really beautiful human being. But that's not what we tell ourselves. And so we filter all of our everything that's going around is getting filtered through the narrative that we hold on to. And if you can be kind to yourself and gracious to yourself, be kind and gracious in the story that you tell yourself of who you are. Because you are not your worst failure. You are, and yet many of us get absolutely tied and chained to that failure.
Yes. And then explaining how we
Your whole
came
life,
out of it. And
your whole life, you're even if you're not doing it out loud, you're doing it inwardly. We're not our biggest mistake. We're not our weakest moment.
and we're not our greatest accomplishment either.
And we're not our greatest accomplishments. You know what? So you've got to find your worth and your value in your essence, I think, in your Meganness. Because you have a composition, an emotional and mental, psychological composition no one's ever had before. And then you express that through kindness and tenderness and through competency. You express that through, just what you do, who you are, what you say, how you are. And so that I think a lot of people really would, walk lighter if they could rewrite the narrative to something kinder.
Would you suggest almost like actually writing it?
If you can identify the story that you tell yourself of who you are, if you can't, then how can you challenge it?
Okay.
And so when I began my story was definitely about not enoughness. I struggled academically so much that I was pretty sure I was the dumbest person in the school. And I held on to that for decades. But it's so painful that you can't hang on to it, kind of in your cognitively, but it drops down into your subconscious mind. But it operates there like a bass note, filtering everything. Oh, I just tapped my mic, filtering everything so that you're always. When you and I meet, if that's my narrative, then I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure you never figure out that I'm the dumbest guy in the room here. And so I have a big personality, and I'll use that personality, and I'll be a dancing bear. I'll juggle for you. I'll do anything just so that you will like me and never figure out that I'm the dumbest guy in the room. And people fight against that their whole lives and never know. And so my first thing is, identify it. And then ask yourself, is it true?
Is it true?
And then find a truth that you can use to challenge it.
So what was your truth to challenge I'm the dumbest guy in the room?
After 17 years of being a motivational speaker, I realized that I had some skills. I realized that I could be really charming. I realized that I can be funny. I realized that I'm good with people and I'm good at communicating. And so I literally wrote this down on a piece of paper. I have intelligence in communicating, in storytelling. I have intelligence in working and understanding and connecting with people. I can make a friend in a heartbeat.
Your EQ is through the roof.
It's pretty high. And so
Yeah.
I replaced, and I was 40 years old when I did this work. I kept saying, I'm not giving any more time or power to this belief that I'm the dumbest guy in every room. In fact, I know that I have intelligence in these areas. I said it out loud for months. And then one day, And because with the first narrative that I had was a truckload of shame. Like I was just always managing my shame.
Right.
Even I'm standing in front of 5,000 people, and when I finish my talk, I'll get a standing ovation, and I'm in that moment still managing my shame.
Right.
And because we do filter everything through that internal narrative. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating when you think about it. And so if you could simply begin to reframe the narrative, and I'm not asking you to tell yourself a lie. I'm just asking you to stop beating yourself up.
Mm-hmm. Did you need those notes today?
No, I didn't. Mm. But then that's the way we roll.
That's the way we roll, yeah. Ed, I don't even know how to thank you.
Anytime. This is my pleasure.
So good. If people want to work with you, if people want to grab a coffee, if people want you to be their therapist, if people want to intern with you, how do people get to you in their life?
Just reach out to me on our Third Space website, and Jennifer will connect us.
We'll get you connected. Okay. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next month.